Hey everyone, welcome to the Horror Show. I'm Cecil Laird, and I'm here to do a review of all 6 of the Blair Witch comic books. Whether you knew they existed or not, they do. And it's interesting, it's 2 one-shots and then a 4-issue series in between. So I'm going to go ahead and talk about them all. I was going to maybe separate them up, but quite honestly, they all tie together pretty well, and in spite of the fact that they're all anthological. So I'm going to get into all of that, but I just wanted to let you know that this is all 6 Blair Witch books that exist to my knowledge right now. So I'm going to start with the first issue that came out right around the time that the movie came out, and it's actually got a glow-in-the-dark cover here. The symbol glows in the dark, but it's a pretty sweet cover. It does have the certificate of authenticity on the back there. Yeah, this is a comic that in itself, this is just a 1-issue book by itself, but it alone is an anthology. There are 3 stories here, and that's what's interesting, I gotta say, about all of these books. There's 6 books, but in actuality, there's 8 different stories that are all about different people being affected by the Blair Witch in different ways. So that in and of itself is an interesting setup. So this first one has 3 of those stories, and it's going to start off, and what's really interesting is the artist that's involved here. The very first one is an artist by the name of Tommy Lee Edwards that has gone on since this to do big things over at Marvel and even beyond that, and he's a really talented artist. So this first story is called Ellie Kedward's Curse. And this is basically, Ellie Kedward is the Blair Witch, if you didn't know. So this verse story is the actual origin of the Blair Witch. That by itself is worth having this comic, in my opinion. But it's really cool, because again, you gotta look at this artwork. It's very different, but it's about this woman named Ellie who shows up in the Americas, unfortunately right at a time where, well, she actually shows up as a younger woman, and she knows that she has this curse that has been following her, where most people that interact with her have terrible fates befall them. And so she comes to this new part of the world that has yet to be really expanded on with population, and she decides to, on the outside of this town, that is called something else at the time. I'm trying to see, maybe I have it down here. Oh, it's just near Baltimore. They don't really name it, but what happens is she decides to get a cabin up near the woods away from the town proper so that her curse doesn't affect anyone, and it works for years. But then, once she's an old woman, the town is expanding, and there are kids that are going out and looking for trouble and stuff, and so, unfortunately, they run afoul of this woman hiding by herself, and so they start calling her a witch, and they even place this time-wise after a big war in the country. The men come home angry and mean, and so she is faced with this tribunal that declares her a witch and takes her out, and basically first severely beats her and then takes her out to the woods to leave her in the winter to die of exposure. What they don't realize is when they kill her, the curse is basically set free, and the curse helps her through. And so that's how the Blair Witch is born. And it's a really cool little story, but then it leads to the second story, which, oh, by the way, this story ends where the town eventually hollows out, and then years later, it's found by a man named Burkett. And so he founds the town of Burkittsville, which is what the town is known as in the first Blair Witch movie. And then we get the second story here. By the way, proper credit where credit's due. The writer here is Yen Van Meter. And again, the artist was Tommy Lee Edwards. Yen Van Meter is the one that, or Jen Van Meter, I'm not sure, I'm guessing it's Yen, does the writing for all these stories, and in fact, the next 4 issues as well. But the artist does change up. So the artist in this episode is Guy Davis, who actually ends up later on going to do some BPRD artwork from the Hellboy universe. So when I went back and read through this, I was like, Jesus, I know 2 of these 3 artists big time right off the bat. So this guy has done some BPRD trade paperbacks, but this story is about this little girl here who is living in Burkittsville but left to play with a dolly by herself, and she is lured out into the woods by the witch that makes her think that she has lost her doll even though she was just holding on to it. And then she starts carrying around this twig. Sorry, let me get this. This twig down here, and the twig is actually speaking the witch's voice. So the witch is talking to her through this twig, and she purposefully hides out in the woods and waits until a specific number of men come looking for her, and then she basically tricks them, and the witch kind of takes over, and it gets pretty gruesome, where she ends up tying them all together and disemboweling them in a circle underneath the Blair Witch sort of totem right here. And it's really an aggressive but really cool story. And then we get to the third story. I'm going to start to speed up because otherwise this whole review will take forever. But I do like to let you guys know, in case you're not willing to invest in these issues, what actually happens in them. So this next one is called Left Alone, the Ruxpin Parr Killings. And that actually makes a big... that's a big story to keep in mind because it ties directly into the final issue of this 6-issue grouping of Blair Witch comics. But this is about a man named Ruxpin Parr who is living by himself near the edge of the woods over here in Burkittsville, and he starts to hear a crazy voice start whispering to him and having him do some weird things. First being he has to start killing kids for the witch's sacrifice. And that's what's actually established in this other story, that that basically the witch requires a sacrifice, which is why there's 5 people here. And then in this next story, she's requiring 7 people, but 7 kids in this one. So this man has to starts tracking down and tricking kids to start killing them, but one gets away, and then there's this one panel here that says it's finally over as he walks into a store, and that comes into play later on. But he basically is a man that's gone crazy, and so that is this first issue. It's just 3 different people that have been severely affected by the Blair Witch. The first one actually being the Blair Witch's story herself. So this comic by itself, the one that I have the certificate of authenticity for, this is the Blair Witch origin comic book. So if you don't have this, I highly recommend you seeking it out. It is worth having if you like the Blair Witch franchise. Now, I'm going to move on to the 4-issue series. Again, there was the 1-issue Blair Witch Dark Testaments, and then there's the 4-issue Blair Witch Chronicles. So let me go through those first because this followed them. But this one actually was also written by Yen Van Meter. So all 4 issues are written by the same guy, but it is an anthology series as well. So again, you get 4 different stories of different people being affected by the Blair Witch. So that's what I really liked about this series. You essentially get 8 mini Blair Witch movies, where you get not only one of the movies is the origin of the Blair Witch in a short form, but 8 short Blair Witch films in comic book form, and it's really awesome. So this first one for Blair Witch Chronicles is, again, it's written by Yen Van Meter, but this one is again drawn by Guy Davis, the one that does the BPRD stuff later on. I'm sure he's done more than that, but that's what I know him from. So that's the first issue there. These are all in black and white, just like the other one, but you can tell that the artwork is the same as the artwork in that middle story there. But this one is about 2 brothers, okay, who one of them is actually in love with a high school classmate by the name of Peg, who they actually had a thing, but they broke up, and Peg starts getting into this jock, and the guys know what a douche the jock is, so they want to stop them from dating because they know the jock is only planning to bed down the girl, and so that's their goal, is to stop this from happening. So they find out they're going to go on a date to make out point, and they set up this whole rig where they're planning to have this fake thing drop out of the trees. You can see right here they rig up this thing that's meant to drop out of the trees. I guess you can see it over here too. But when it happens, when they're waiting for the couple to arrive on their date, they hear screaming, and so they go running through the woods to find out what's going on. And what they find is not the nicest thing by any stretch. They find the boy, the jock, gutted upside down, and then the girl is there sitting next to them and just completely out of it. And I'm not going to spoil everything for you guys, but this ends up being the boys affected by the witch from then on until they grow old. So this book is actually a cross-generational story about the same two boys as they finally face up to what happened when they were high school kids regarding the witch. And it's a really interesting story, and it has an ending that's like, oh, this would be like a Twilight Zone ending, but it's really cool. Again, it's just interesting to see these different stories interacting with the Blair Witch. So the next issue is this one right here, and this one was done again. Issue 2 was also done by Guy Davis. Okay, so issue 2 was also, they mislabeled the cover. It says it was done by Guy Davis, but on the inside, the actual artwork was done by Bernie Meyrolt, who did the third story in that first issue. So this one is a little bit weird. This one actually felt like it was done completely not completely, but sort of semi out of order. So it didn't really jive with me that well. The story itself is, it's called The Offering, and it's about this guy that joins the town of Burkittsville right when they're doing this ritual called The Offering, where they go into the woods and every family leaves a little something that's valuable to them for the witch so that they don't get attacked by the witch on an annual basis. This guy that moved into the town doesn't believe it, so he refuses to leave something, and everyone else is like, that's not a good idea, man. He's like, I don't believe it. But as they continue on, he's the only one that's able to take down a deer when they're all out hunting. And so everyone else in the town basically swears off taking any meat from that family, and that family, as they start eating that meat that was bountiful for them that day, they start deteriorating, slowly but surely getting more and more gross looking over time because they're slowly being poisoned by the meat. And eventually the people decide to check in on them because they stop coming out into the town proper, and there's a confrontation that doesn't go as well as you might hope. And so again, it's just the effect of what happens when the Blair Witch takes hold of someone in Burkittsville. But that was another interesting story. So continuing on to issue 3 here, this one, let me show you this cover. I'll take it out of the plastic so there's no blur, or no glare rather. This one, also written by Jan Van Meter, was drawn by Tom Fowler, who actually also went on to have a sort of bigger illustrating career. But this one was an interesting story about a group of Wiccans that hear about something crazy going on in this part of America, and they actually own a witch shop, and it is set in 1986, I think? 1991. So they basically get called out to Burkittsville to try and figure out what's going on out there that is witch related. And so they all go out to do a cleansing. That's what they're hired to go do. So they all go out to the woods to try and do a cleansing. And when they get to the home on the side of the woods, it's so jacked up inside. There's all these bloody handprints and, salt circles and everything like that. And so they're doing their best to try and cleanse this thing, but it does not, they think it works and they all leave. But what ends up happening is throughout the rest of the issue, then the bad things start happening to all the women. Anyone that was involved in the cleansing, bad things start to happen. So it's the witch striking back for them doing this. And it gets to some really interesting places. And again, the artwork is really cool. I really like Tom Fowler's artwork in this. I can't recall exactly what he's done that strikes me, because I know I've seen it before, but it's a really interesting story, and it ends on a bit of a bleak note that I won't spoil for you. But that leads us to the 4th issue in this anthology here, the Blair Witch Chronicles, which the cover looks like this. So again, you got Burkittsville there. Welcome to Burkittsville sign. The covers were really interesting, but this one, let me make sure I have that one on. So this one is called Fire, and the art was once again by Bernie Myrath. So unfortunately, it's that weird sort of cartoony artwork. And this one is about a person that lives in Burkittsville that sort of has a degree of success and sway. It's set in 1827. It's the Journal of Dr. Samuel Hale. And it's the church in Burkittsville keeps getting burned down before anything can happen until this new priest is sent to the town by Dr. Samuel Hale to take over things, and his name is Matthew Edwards, because he is a no-nonsense priest that won't take crap from any sort of spectral entity. But unfortunately, when he goes, the congregation slowly starts to go crazy and turn on him, and things don't end very well for Mr. Edwards, and it becomes a bit of a weird sort of adult Children of the Corn scenario. But it's kind of interesting, I guess, but it's just not what I was hoping the story would end on after such strong places up till then. I mean, look at this artwork. It draws you out after the distinguished artwork of those other issues. So this one just kind of ends with more of a whimper than a bang. So I'm not going to spoil it, but that's the end of issue 4 of this 4-issue Chronicles series. Now, while this one was a bit weaker, I do think that it's worth having all of them because it's a complete story, and it all leads to this one here, which is Blair Witch Dark Testaments. So that first issue came out around the time the first movie came out. This one came out before the second movie, which was only like a year or two later because they got rushed into production after the success of the first movie. So this one was an interesting read. This is the only one that was actually in color. And it's also the only one that was not written by Yen Van Meter. This one was actually written by Ian Eddington. And here is the super interesting thing. When I opened this up and looked, the art is by Charlie Adlard. If you guys don't know, Charlie Adlard is the one that did issue 7 through 193 of The Walking Dead. He did the entire thing after the first 6 issues, which were done by Tony Moore. So Charlie Adlard is a huge name in comics now. This one was done in 2001 or 2000. So that's what's so interesting about this. I'm not even sure who the cover artist is, but there's the cover so you guys see. It's a weird sort of abstract kind of cover, but the artwork itself, you'll recognize from, if you're a fan of The Walking Dead, you'll recognize this, except it's in color. Look at this stuff. This is Charlie Adlard, just earlier in his career before he's gone on to the greener black and white pastures of The Walking Dead. But it's about this man named Davy, who is an old man who, the issue starts off where he tries to smother 2 babies with a pillow. He's unsuccessful and he's put in jail as a result, but that's what is happening. And the reason why is explained through the backstory of the book, where you find out that him as a young boy here, little Davy there, was actually friends with Dale and Rustin Parr, which, if you were listening earlier, the 3rd story of the first issue was called The Rustin Parr Killings, or at least that was the subtitle of it. So this one is following a little boy named Davy who is friends with Dale and Rustin Parr as little boys. So they grow up sort of together a little bit, at least, and they have this weird occurrence where something happens and Rustin starts to act weird, and Dale starts to act weird as well. They have a big falling out because of this moment here, where Dale basically has Rustin lure a squirrel over, where he can shoot him with the slingshot there, and then at that point, Rustin basically tells Dale that he's not his brother anymore. So it starts this divide. Again, this is so Walking Dead. This facial structure has been seen so many times in the Walking Dead comic book, but this is a precursor to it. So what happens is the witch actually creeps in at night because Dale is really worried that Rustin is going to leave him, or vice versa. I might have that reversed, but nonetheless, she assures him that no, they'll always be around. And it's a story of what happens at one point. Rustin gets beat up while Dale is just left to watch by this drunk guy in the town. And so that guy goes to jail, and everyone else starts to grow up, but he's still in jail as everything is happening. Meanwhile, bad things are going on in the town, and Dale and Rustin are keeping to themselves, but Dale has become such a different person that it goes bad, and his dad is literally left to take him out and show him the flowers, like in that episode of The Walking Dead, and takes him out. And it's such a down issue, but it's such an effective issue showing what can happen with the Blair Witch's influence. And I'm not going to show you how it all wraps up because I don't want to spoil it, but that is the interesting thing, and it tells how Davy sort of is wrapped up in that past story. But I mean, that is just really fun stuff, and I love that this one tied so much in to the very first issue. But guys, the Blair Witch comics are worth your time. And the reason I wanted to put this out is because of the Blair Witch game that is about to come out. We are going to be doing some coverage of that. I'll do a review of it eventually, but I am going to be doing Let's Plays of it, so stay tuned to the channel for that. The game drops August 30th, but I wanted to make sure and get the review of the comics up ahead of time because I've been sitting on these for about 8 months at this point, so it's time to review them anyway. So I hope you guys enjoyed that review. Let me know in the comments down below if you're interested in these comics, if you're going to seek them out, or if this was enough of a coverage aspect for you. Let me know in those comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, click that like button and subscribe for more stuff coming from the horror show. We still have a huge announcement coming in the middle of October, so stay tuned for that. But thank you guys very much for watching. Until next time, I've been Cecil Laird. A special thanks to all of our patrons. If you want to become a patron, that link is down there as well. But until next time, guys, remember, stay scared.